Hello. I don't see it now. Okay. It's not synchronized with the StreamYard and YouTube are sometimes not synchronized. That's why. But
Say
we're
hello.
live now. Hello.
Say hello,
Welcome.
chat.
We are live now. Hello. Welcome to the Dutch Doctor Who channel. I'm Enigmatic Joker and we have a guest, Queen Charlotte. Hello.
Hiya. It's nice to be back. I enjoyed it the last time.
Yes, that's right. And last week we had Peter Rich. It was also a nice stream. And looking forward to this. We go to discuss the personality of the Doctor tonight. And I have an idea about this. I want to do a series about different doctors. So next week we will do the first Doctor, I think, and then maybe sometime we do other streams also. But I want to do a series about the doctors, because every doctor is unique. Every doctor has his personality, his habits, and his skills. So I want to do that, and I think it's a good idea to do that.
Yeah, the Doctor has his sort of core traits, doesn't he? And that's what we want to talk about in this stream. And then each incarnation is like, I see it as a variant almost of those core traits, sort of a bit different or a bit more or less dependent on the incarnation you get.
Yeah. We will also do the 13th Doctor. I know it's a little bit controversial, but
she does have a personality, to be fair.
Yeah. So, everyone is unique. Kijk, we have one Dutch guy. The Kamikaze is a Dutch guy from the Discord.
Hi, Kamikaze. Have I said that right?
Yeah, I think.
You're gonna have fun. You're gonna have fun me trying to pronounce some of these names. I'm terrible.
Kamikaze is I think it's good because in Dutch kamikaze, but I think how you pronounce it is good.
For me, that's saying a lot because I'm absolutely terrible at names. As Bobby Sudoku can tell you, the amount of times I got his name wrong.
Sudoku.
Yeah, it took me a while. He will tell you.
So the first time we see the Doctor is in an Unearthly Child, and our first impression of that Doctor is a little bit the first companions he meets. He is not happy with that, and that's the first impression we have of the Doctor. Exactly.
Yeah, we sort of have. Yeah? We sort of have the sort of grumpy old man a bit, isn't it? Almost when we first meet the Doctor.
That was the first impression, and then during the other regeneration, other incarnations of the Doctor, we see every time we see another Doctor, another character traits, and that is the uniqueness of the show, by the way. And the first regeneration was more out of what do you call it? William Hartnell William Hartnell was sick, and then they needed another actor.
Yeah, so I'd say almost like it was a necessity. Like they did it because literally William's health was failing. So it was sort of they wanted to carry the show on, but they knew they were losing, or they had to let go of their main actor. So it's like, how on earth do we carry on this show?
Yeah. And that idea they carried to the whole show, to all the older Doctors also. Yeah.
Yeah, because was it Sydney who thought of like the core idea of regeneration?
Sydney Newman. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that's because it's, even though like Verity had a lot to do with creating it, sort of Sydney Newman would sort of, didn't the story go, he's like, oh, he's an alien, so just make up like he can change his face, sort of. Which is sort of the cleverness, you can almost say, of that, like that they even just started with an alien, because if he was a human, like let's say the Doctor was just like a human scientist, you couldn't do regeneration, could you?
Mm-hmm.
So it was sort of quite a good thing that they started off with him being an alien.
Mm-hmm. Yes. The first time I saw Doctor Who, the William Hartnell, I thought it was a scientist from Earth, and Later, I thought yes, it's but because the term Time Lord is much later.
Yeah, was it Tom?
We didn't know for a long time what his origins was origins.
Yeah, was it at the end of like Troughton's run? You saw Time Lords for the first time.
Yeah.
And were they even known like called Time Lords?
Mm-hmm.
Or were they just sort of? Was that when the name was first said?
Names. I don't really know.
The chat will probably help us.
Yes.
That's the fun thing about in a chat. You tend to have a question and they'll answer you.
Yeah, there will. Daniel Leitch says hello, Joker, and hello to my lovely but also scary co-host.
You need a scary co-host because of you, mate.
and there will be a time we can pronounce Sadeko good. Sadeko.
Sadeko, I can do it now. He will tell you at the beginning I was terrible. Like, not trying.
If an unlucky child was the only existing episode, there'd be no sense the Doctor was a hero.
Yeah, like you sort of said, he's sort of, and that's what I like about Barbara and Ian. That like compared to all the other companions, they weren't planned. They didn't choose. They sort of got kidnapped almost by the Doctor, and I think that's a really fun way to have your first companions. And like we were saying, to do with the Doctor, it shows an interesting sort of first impression, doesn't it?
Oh, this adds to the question of war games. That's the last story of Patrick Troughton.
Yeah, so it will be. So that's when we saw Time Lords. Then Daniel, did they call them Time Lords in the story?
Yeah, that I know for sure that they called it Time Lords. I know that.
Yeah.
So. Also, apparently, in Celestial Toymaker, where the Doctor becomes invisible, they were toying with having him come back in form under a different actor. That's because of Toymaker's power. Yes, I know that. I
didn't know that. That's an interesting. I didn't even know that was like a other possibility.
That was on the bonus features of the DVD. They talked about that it was a plan to replace him, but I don't know exactly what the case was, but. I think there are some contracts involved with. I think.
Yeah, because even like, and that's sort of the fun thing I do find with Troughton's run. You can see they're still like finding their feet and still trying to like work out bits of what we see as canon or like the mythology, if I can get my words out, of the Doctor. Like you can see that starting to get built in Troughton's run, which is quite interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also that's with the meddling monk. We see the monk by then was referred to another of the Doctor's people. That's right. And they called not a Time Lord, but it was a people, the same people from the same people. Mythology.
Yeah.
Mythology.
That's some words I can say really, really well.
Okay.
So I also said canon because I can say that word. Yeah. So the sort of and I also think sort of the start of the Doctor's personality is the sort of grandfather, isn't it? That's the sort of type, like archetype, if you were to give him one to begin with.
With our original, yes. And what the common thing is about Doctor and all Doctors is they are all defenders and of time, space. You want to call it? They defend and they protect people from bad enemy or.
Yeah, no, I think it's sort of if they ever see somebody in need, isn't it? If they ever see whether a group or a person who's either like in trouble or looks like they're being like oppressed or anything like that, the Doctor will sort of always rally or defend or do what they need to help that person.
That is what they're looking for: compassionate benefactor.
Yeah, the compassion's a really big thing, and
Yeah,
it's why when other certain doctors do certain things, it sort of doesn't feel right, because compassion is a major part of the doctor's personality.
That's one of the reasons I think that the last Doctor Jodie Whittaker is not so they don't fit in the whole story of the Doctor, because you see less compassion.
Yeah, it's and I think and the other, it's not just like, for me, a big part of the Doctor's compassion is to sort of show it to people you wouldn't think he would show compassion to, or sort of now and again he will have like an alien that's maybe been like a villain for a bit of the story, or has done terrible things, and the Doctor can always find a way to show compassion even to like the most low of the low, and I think that's also a really important part of the Doctor's personality. That they can sort of put their own feelings to one side and think, well, no, this is still a person in need, even though I don't like them, or they've done something like against me.
Yeah. What I want to say is, what all the doctors have in common also is that they can, when it is absolutely necessary, they can be a great warrior. In some things, you can see that. You see it also with different doctors like Matt Smith, or even Pertwee in some degree.
Yeah, and it's interesting how they all interpret. It's almost a different interpretation of that idea, isn't it? With each Doctor, it's like one Doctor will just sort of stand there and do a big speech and like try and diffuse it that way, whereas another will use sort of force if they have to, and another will like try and think of a scientific approach. Like it's the same core thing of, like you said, being a warrior, almost trying to defeat or sort of save or do those sort of things, but it very much is a different method, with dependent on the Doctor you're watching at that time.
Yeah, there's also an episode that is linked to the gamma forests, and they translate the word Doctor as warrior. So
yes,
they see the Doctor as a sort of warrior. So that's why I'm linked it to sometimes the Doctor is a warrior, and it is the War Doctor is the most extreme, but he's a sort of anomaly, or you call that?
Yeah, he was sort of, obviously he was added almost for the special, wasn't he? And it was sort of like, we hadn't at that point had all the Doctors on screen were traditional. They'd regenerated from the previous Doctor.
Yeah.
And he was sort of a dropped in there type of deal, wasn't he? Of, oh, now John Hurt's a Doctor, like out of nowhere. But like, I think John Hurt's Doctor worked because John Hurt is like, God love him, he's passed now, but he was like one of our most beloved actors. He had such a history and such a sort of so many big roles he'd done, and because we hadn't known, like the Time War had sort of been kept a mystery, even though we still had at times like referenced it. We never fully knew we still don't, that's one of the things I love about the Time War. Even now it's pretty sort of dark. We don't know all the history of it.
No.
So you could feasibly add a Doctor there. I think that's why it worked.
Yeah. It is still we still don't know what the reason was why we have the 8th Doctor, and then suddenly War, and then suddenly 9th Doctor. So
well, like Moffat did film that little minisode, didn't he, to try and connect the 8th Doctor to the War Doctor. Because obviously on telly, the 8th Doctor's a romantic. Like that's his personality. He's quite sort of positive and romantic and sort of. So you can't have that. That doesn't fit in your head almost with, like, soldier, like that sort of traumatic experience we know the Time War was for the Doctor just by looking at Eccleston's performance.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And we have also the other selves and unplaced incarnations of the Doctor, like Morbius. That's a controversial.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, I've watched the episode. I don't know what you think, but for me, they're blatantly not Doctors.
Yeah, that's right. That is why I call it unplaced, because we cannot place it. We don't know what it is, what the meaning was of it.
Yeah, they were sort of just flashes on the screen, weren't they? Literally.
Yeah, and we had also the curator. That was Tom Baker, the curator in the episode.
Yeah, well, Moffat had a cheeky line to basically say, "Well, you might revisit some old favourites," didn't they?
And we have the fugitive Doctor. We don't know where that to place that. Some people think that between the second and the third Doctor, there are other theories also. Fugitive Doctor. That's you know.
Well, he hasn't explained yet, and we're sort of people are hoping in Series 13 we'll get some sort of explanation.
Mm-hmm. And we have a controversial Timeless Child also. And we have a more ambitious is the other. You know that the term the other. If you heard about that, yes. You had Omega, the other, and you had another Threshold.
Yeah, I just think though it's so hard, isn't it? When like we connect with a Doctor a lot because we watch their adventures for so many years.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're given like one episode with a Doctor or like half of an episode with a Doctor, it's sort of unless they're like I said, unless you've got like the caliber of actor like John Hurt, it's very hard to connect, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of that's why we naturally connect with a lot of the more sort of I would refer to them as the main Doctors. Sort of Hartnell, just for some to Whittaker, like those are the ones that people have more of a connection to.
We have more people. Cam, who I have in chat. Hello.
Hi, Cam.
Sadeko had a reaction of Hartnell begins by just wanted to preserve his immediate family and then companions. It's more important to him that Casualty remains unchanged. Gradually, the Daleks are what make him become a hero. And Daniel says Charlotte has a lot of Matt's Doctor within her, as she's very optimistic and wise.
I try and be positive.
She looks wise, but I would have preferred McGann as the War Doctor.
Yeah, I think it would have been so interesting to see him in that special. I think that's what I think. It's like I would have loved to have seen him play off Tennant and Matt. I really would have.
John Hurt as a Doctor, 9 Doctor or something. John Hurt was also a good actor, I think, for it.
Oh yeah, I think at least he played what he got given well, but I think a lot of people would have preferred if it was McGann.
Yeah. That's what I meant. By the way, by the other. The other was a theory of the previous Morbius phases where.
Yes, I know it's like an extended like universe thing, isn't it? Yeah. Like in the book.
And the other is then the Doctor, and you have Omega, and you have Reshion, all involved in the history of the Time Lords.
Yeah, so I watched the show and I love the show, but I'm not a massive reader of like books outside of it. Like I'm just getting like used to Big Finish right about now, and that's about it. I've not read a lot of the like books really. So a lot of the stuff that is in those, whether it's comics or books, I'm not that. I know of the other just because of how much it has become sort of a thing in fandom. But if it's not like a big thing, if it's in a book or comic, I'll be useless.
We have also the called the Watcher and the Villiard. the Villiard is also a point of discussion. Or if it is the Doctor or not. Most people think it is explained that it is the Doctor, but the darker side of the Doctor, personality of the Doctor.
Yeah, it's sort of, I've seen it as it's sort of the Doctor if you flipped a coin. Like if, like you said, if he wasn't a hero, if he wasn't sort of a defender, if he didn't protect people, you'd get the Valeyard. Because like and this is what I do think the Doctor should show flashes of almost being a scary sort of force. Like it shouldn't be the whole personality of the Doctor, but you need to have those scenes when you think, God, I wouldn't want to cross him. Like I wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of this being. And you sort of have to have flashes of that in the Doctor. And I think the Valeyard is basically, if the Doctor was like that all the time almost.
But is it also the case with the Valeyard? Is that comparable with the Dream Lord in the episode with Amy and Rory and Matt Smith?
I think it's coming from the same sort of idea, like where the Valeyard came from. I think that was Moffat trying to do his almost version, because the Valeyard's not, even though it sounds easy, it's not an easy thing to do in the show, especially now, because it was sort of, it came at the end of the classic run, and because before Whittaker they'd extended this cycle, hadn't they? They'd given the Doctor a whole new cycle of regenerations, and the Valeyard's supposed to come right at the end of a cycle, so it'd be hard anyway to do him. And I think Moffat knew that and knew what he was going to do with Matt's Doctor. So he was like, this is the best way I can get the Valeyard in without calling it the Valeyard.
I wanted that more explained, the Valeyard. Maybe they, for in the future, could it be to explain that with the Valeyard? Because it's you can do more with that.
Oh, my dream thing for if for a 60th, because I know that's now in debate, but my dream thing would be, instead of doing the Master again, instead of having Daleks again as your villain or Cybermen, do the Valeyard. I really think that would be an interesting villain for a 60th.
Yeah, that's right.
Because it would tie into the themes of legacy and celebrating the history. You could even have like a past actor who's played the Doctor come and play the Valeyard.
This is
and
right.
It was, like I said, because I think McGann, I really think, because McGann's Doctor has become quite dark on Big Finish. So I think if you sort of did him without saying he was the Valeyard, you just said Paul McGann's going to be in it, and then have the reveal like near like halfway through of, God, he's the Valeyard. I think that'd be amazing.
And we also have the time of when David Tennant regenerated in himself. The Meta Crisis, I think it's called.
Yeah, when his hand regenerated, as I think of it.
But have you noticed some personality has changed in that? After that, he regenerated again in himself, or? But there's a spontaneous thing I think about now. Is there a slightly difference after his self regeneration?
What you mean?
Maybe we must study it and watch it again yeah.
Well, they do comment, don't they? On, he even says to him like he's me, like when he's dropping off Rose in the parallel universe, and he sort of gives her that Doctor. He does say to her, like, does he remind you of anybody? He's me before I met you. So he sort of, to me, that's him saying, this is like the rawness of the Doctor after the Time War. This is the Doctor before he sort of relearned how to sort of have companions again and sort of have that link again. And he's sort of saying to her, like, you have to rebuild him almost a bit. You have to get him to a better place. That's what you did with me in that 9th incarnation. And I think that was a major sort of part of Nine's journey. Because if you compare like Nine in Dalek, for example, like how sort of he's spitting almost in that, he's angry, he's like an animal. And if you compare that to then Nine in Parting of the Ways, it's almost like it's not a complete different character, but you can definitely see the progression, can't you?
Oh, we have Peter Rich, and this is the area.
Hi guys.
They are the moderators, by the way.
Oh, that's good. You always need a few.
Yeah. Where was I? Oh yeah, wait, Magic Crisis also. Okay, that all the in-placed incarnations and the more ambitious doctors. According to the master, he chose the name Doctor to reflect his constant desire to make people better. You can just see that in the Sound of the Drums episode.
Yeah, he sort of says the name for healer, doesn't he, to him?
Yeah. To make feel better. That's also a common thing in the personalities, all different personalities of Doctor. He wants to make people better. But by the way, some doctors are more hard. You must harder. To do more effort to look for that. We know all.
Well, yeah, I think there's some doctors who sort of give up a bit more easily on people, and there's other doctors who will basically fight tooth and nail to save somebody.
Yeah. And there's also one doctor who says is socially awkward. We know all we do this.
No, but to be fair, like that scene, that's what I think some people who I've seen defend it don't seem to understand. And it's like, it's the fact that there was, like you've sort of said, there was no attempt to make him feel better. Like, even if she tried and failed, that would be at least trying. And that would be a doctor thing to do, to like, because we have seen in plenty of incarnations the sort of not knowing human sort of whether they should hug or not, or whether they should say something or not, and it's that sort of natural, or that's the actual awkwardness of the doctor. It's not refusing to say something, it's the sort of not knowing how to deliver it. And that's the sort of fun thing as an audience to watch with the doctor. The sort of, they've been around Earth and humans for so long, they think they can act human, but there's always going to be that hint of you're not human, you don't quite know how to interact yet.
Yeah. If you don't know what to say, you can at least you can hug someone or show some compassion. It's cheap. It is cheap to say I'm socially awkward or something. Or is it wrong what I say?
Or just like we've sort of all said, like you're in the TARDIS, take him to a hospital, like take him somewhere to make him know he's okay.
Yeah.
It's if you can't physically say something, and that's the doctor. And that's what I think is so brilliant about the idea of the Doctor being a different type of hero. Because when you think of hero, you think of like rushing in, using maybe violence, like being the big hero that way. But the Doctor sort of is a hero by just sometimes noticing people and just sort of talking to them, or like encouraging them. Like the Doctor's a hero in so many different ways, more than just the conventional, which is something that's made this character so unique.
Yeah, that's right. There is also an episode, and then we have Missy, and he claimed to know the Doctor's real name, and she said, "Doctor Who." Do you know
that was Missy, though.
It was with World Enough in Time, I think.
Yeah, but it's Missy. She was like always like having a bit of. Missy was an interesting master, because you can't trust the master point blank, but I think she was one that you even less trusted, because of how she spoke sometimes in like utter just that is that a lie, or you just sort of bending the truth, or you just making stuff up. Like you can never quite know with Missy. Daniel, I'm fed up of seeing the Master. I don't hate the character. I'm fed up of seeing them.
Oh, I think he loses now his co-host.
You know why? It's because he's in the chat. He's going to be cocky now. But we've got a stream tomorrow, Daniel.
Oh, yeah,
I'm going to say.
A lot to talk about before that.
Yes. No, but it's just sort of, like I said, it's the Doctor. It's also that he's unpredictable at times. I think that's a common trait, which is sort of important as well.
How many times has the Doctor taken someone to the cities of? What do you mean about? What do you mean?
Oh, are those the cat nurses, PD? You're talking about the cat nurses? Because he took River once she'd like burnt out all her regenerations. I'm trying to think of actually the Doctor has plenty of time. Like if somebody's ill or has got an illness, he has tried to either fix it or direct them to somewhere.
That was the last episode. Matt Smith took one to the Sisters of Planet, I think. What was the last time? Matt Smith.
Well, he
in series 6. In series 6, where there was a scene with that he took it to the Sisters of Planet too, but I don't know exactly what.
I'm sure it was River, wasn't it? Because she just like burnt out all her regenerations, healing him.
Oh yeah, it was River. Yes. Was it with the Graham? Huh? Universal Supreme. Oh yeah, at the end of Let's Kill Hitler. Yes, that episode I saw last week. At the end of Let's Kill Hitler, you saw that he took to the Sisters of Yes, this was in the end of Let's Kill Hitler. That's right.
Yeah, and then we also recently watched the Almost People 2-parter, and there was a woman who literally had a tumor, and like in the last 5 minutes, he just sort of knocked up a cure, chucked it to her, and said, "Oh, have that, then you'll be fine."
Yeah, it's a bottle.
You either can. That's what I mean, though. It's that sort of, and that's another thing with the Doctor. It's like they can just on the whim create something or make something that would take like a human hundreds of years to do, and the Doctor can just go, "Oh, here's a cure for your tumor." Do you know? Just like off the bat, it's not a big deal for him. He can just make it like on the TARDIS almost. So it's like that sort of. They have to be very. I think another trait is like inventiveness, isn't it? And that sort of is shown in different passions in different Doctors.
And by the way, there was also a situation about the 11th Doctor with Clara Oswald, and that his real name was not so important since he specifically chose in place the title of Doctor like a promise she made. Yes. His promise was as a 10th and War Doctor recited together, never cruel or cowardly. Never give up, never give in.
Never give in. And
that was also a corrected trait of all the Doctors, by the way.
Yeah, and I think it's a simple like mantra, but it's sort of one that you can see throughout them all, and I think that's why also the sort of never cruel and never cowardly. I think those two sentences are sort of kept in fandom, and we almost measure a Doctor against that a bit. It's sort of that's the sort of core traits that we know a Doctor might be a bit more silly, or might be a bit more serious, or might be a bit more sort of down to earth. Like, but if they have to always not be cowards, and they have to never be cruel, and those are two really important parts of the Doctor.
I'm looking for the comment of because I've this one back of Sadeko. the 12th Doctor, Peter Capaldi, claimed that that when he originally adopted the title, it was just a name, and which had no real significance until his first visit to Scarrow. The first visit to Scarrow was in William Hartnell's time. So that is when he called I think this he called himself the Doctor. So
well, yeah.
Let's call it another way. I think the title Doctor, when he stole the TARDIS, he wasn't calling himself the Doctor, I think. But when he traveled with the TARDIS, he came to that name, I think. What do you think?
Like I said, I've there's still bits I'm missing on William's run, so I'm not like an expert. But I can see the idea of seeing the Daleks and sort of seeing such a race of absolute hate and sort of distilled hate at that for everything else that exists, and sort of having that have such an impact on you that it would sort of make you want to change and be positive, like be almost like a counterforce to the Daleks.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of because they're full of hate and sort of destruction and prejudice, to sort of be the opposite of that and to sort of be in the universe to sort of say, no, there is compassion, there is sort of being the hero, like you sort of said. And I like that. Like I said, I think that's a really nice idea. If that's, I don't know if that's what actually happened in the story, but I can see that being how the Doctor sort of adopted that namesake. Because they we know on Gallifrey that giving yourself a title means something. Like the Master, there's a reason he called himself the Master. So it makes sense that there'd be a very big reason why the Doctor would choose the Doctor, because it has got all those sort of meanings of healer, sort of compassion, like being actively trying to help people.
Mm-hmm.
And it would also
I think about it. Yeah.
And so it would also explain why when each Doctor sees a Dalek, they all freak out as well.
Yeah. I have a question. I have an answer for my own question. I do you know the scene with Clara Oswald? Because the first Doctor responded to the name when an echo of Clara Oswald put it to him before even departing Gallifrey. Just before he stole it, he reacted to the name of him. Dus I think he had the title off before he stole the TARDIS already, because he responded to the name when Clara Oswald called him.
Yeah, so do you think that maybe that's saying like it was always inside that name and it just took like something like the Daleks to bring it out? Is that what you're thinking?
Mm-hmm.
And he sort of would react to it even before he got given it. That, like I said, that. See, I do sort of my own belief. I do believe in the idea of a soul, so that would suit that sort of in real life. I do believe in that sort of that. Yeah. Yes, I don't know what happens after death, but I do believe that we all have a soul, and sort of your life experiences affects that, but everybody has intrinsic sort of values and as intrinsic parts of their personality that. So the Doctor, I like that idea that the Doctor's sort of soul already knew that name.
Yeah. Okay.
Brought out.
Yeah. Interesting. I can stick with that. I can agree with that. I think. Yeah. It's possible.
Yeah, it sort of it makes sense for.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Doctor.
Yes, but that's what I call it. With Titanic, my heart will go on. Even.
Well, to be fair, like that's how if people like say if I ever try to explain regeneration, I basically say imagine like a soul, but it's not. It's like it's not been kept to one body. It's just moved from body to body, but it's the same soul. It's the same memories. It's the same experiences that each Doctor sort of carries of what their previous incarnation did. And sort of, And that's why I think it's very important when you go from a doctor to a doctor that there is that sort of thread that you can sort of see in them all. And it's when that's broken for me when I struggle to like identify a doctor almost, and I sort of don't believe that they're the doctor, even though they're calling themselves that title.
Mm-hmm. And every person has his own favorite doctor, and I think that is because maybe are there some character traits, you call that, character things, but that you can relate to, or things that you like in his action or in his habits, even. What I mentioned before in the beginning of the stream, every doctor incarnation has his habits and his own skills in a certain way.
Oh yeah, like there's, it's like
or some catchphrases.
Some off my head. Well, see, that for me, that's not a habit though, a catchphrase. But I'm trying to think of something off my head. Like I do agree with you, they definitely have habits. I'm just trying to.
But they're still gossiping, by the way, yeah? Gossiping about you in this chat.
It's Daniel. Daniel, what are you doing?
I think you have no co-host tomorrow. And we do an extra. What we shall do? What we will do? We do an extra stream on this channel, and you come here.
Daniel, he's trying to kidnap your co-host. No, I'm trying to think of like a habit off my head, because actually, with 11, I would say the habit of the talking fast. I mean, all doctors talk fast, but I think Matt's doctor had a habit of really almost machine gun sort of delivery of a lot of information at once. So I think that'd be a habit I'd associate with Matt's doctor. Whereas I think other doctors would be a bit more slow, a bit more precise with their words when they were like rhyming off a load of technobabble or sort of information.
And there's also the thing. That was, I thought it was watch along of last weekend that we just discussed you have a doctor and a companion who does not fit with each or require that you can then go on along. Clara was fine with Matt, for example, but a pain in the back side with Peter in Series 8. P. Rich says.
Yeah, I think
some characters, or what I want to say is this: personality of a doctor. Sometimes some companions doesn't fit with it, or doesn't seem to go along with each other.
Yeah, no, I think because it's such a delicate thing, isn't it? A doctor and companion, like chemistry or relationship or whatever you want to use the term for it. It's sort of, it either hits it off straight away. Like, I think Troughton and Jamie are like that. I think you can tell instantly as soon as those two are on screen together that they sort of have this sort of lovely brotherly bond.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and they're both sort of a bit cheeky. They both like to get into trouble, and they sort of egg each other on almost. Whereas that's very different to, let's say, Sarah Jane and Tom, because Sarah's sort of like the responsible one. I feel like half the time with Tom's doctor, like Tom's sort of doing his sort of thing of being a bit like not thinking before he speaks, or sort of just rushing ahead, and it's like it takes Sarah to sort of go, no, let's think this through. So that's very different to Jamie and Troughton, isn't it? Or sort of Jamie and Second Doctor.
Mm-hmm. Good. The Doctor and Jamie, one of the combinations. That's the word I look for. Combination works very good.
Yeah, and I think I do think some of that is the actors, obviously, because if you see Fraser talk in any sort of conventions or do interviews, and they get him talking about Pat, you can see that affection in his eyes or the way he sort of talks, and I think that's why also like Fraser does a very good Troughton sort of impression almost.
Yeah,
Like, it's more than an impression. He can become Troughton almost.
Mm-hmm. That's what I want to say. A companion can make or break a personality of the Doctor. What I want to say with that is some companions strengthen the personality in that case. Some can diminish it. Is it that nice explanation?
Yeah, no, because for me, Clara was almost like she came across to me with Peter that she was like talking down to Peter a lot.
Mm-hmm.
She was sort of making it out that like he was. It almost came across a bit mean at times as well to me watching it. I know some people. Yes, Daniel, I am. It came across that like she was talking down and she was being a bit mean spirited almost to the Doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And like as the watcher, that I remember hating watching some of the earlier Capaldi seasons, not because of him, because I couldn't stand Clara and the way she was treating the Doctor.
Yeah.
So that was like one that literally stopped me from watching the show at a point. Because I was just like, I'm gonna just hate watching the episodes because of her. Whereas you've got like the 10th Doctor and Donna, who were so fun, and the sort of, so that's sort of the difference actually. Like, because I'll say to people like I love Donna, and she did challenge the Doctor. She did call the Doctor out. That was a big part of her sort of the way she worked with her Doctor. But it never came across as mean. It never came across as unfounded. Whereas I felt like with Clara, she was unnecessarily at times badgering the Doctor or having a go at him. So I think that's the difference that you was getting at with the making and breaking a personality.
Yeah, that's how I like the combination of Tennant and Donna. Both strong personalities and not completing each other by a certain completing each other.
Yeah, because at the end, I think
they make each other better. That's
yes.
what I want to say. Make each other better in a certain way.
Yeah, because a companion, sort of I've always seen a big part of the companion in relation to the Doctor is to be that almost fresh eyes, because the Doctor's seen so much, he's experienced so much. I think at times he can almost become numb to suffering, to sort of the bigger picture, because he's sort of been there, done it. And it sort of takes a human who sort of hasn't got that experience yet to sort of say, no, stop. That's why, like, in Donna's first episode, The Christmas Invasion, the Doctor's so, like, engrossed in the sort of, in the sort of killing of the, oh God, what's the spider called? What's the race called?
Race.
I'm blanking, like the big spider lady. Like because of the history, because of the Time War history of them being like enemies, he doesn't even think it through. Ragnos, that's it.
Yep.
He doesn't like, because obviously the Time Lords and the Ragnos have a history, and they have a very bad and sort of a lot of violence and sort of blood has been slain on both ends. And like that's what you're getting at with the Doctor, sort of having that warrior mentality. Like in that moment, he was full warrior. He wasn't thinking the morals of it. It took Donna to say, "No, look at what you're doing. You are literally slaughtering innocent children." And it sort of took Donna to sort of make him realise that. And the Doctor needs that because he can become sort of his own worst enemy at times.
Yeah. Let's look. Where was I? So we have. What we know, we have 14. No, incarnations. And what we'll do is we go for the coming weeks. We do one doctor at a time. Because every doctor has a uniqueness, and I want to do it. I want to build it with around other things in it also. But because what I just said, the every doctor has his own habits. For example, and catchphrases. For example, you have the Tom Baker, and who is always flamboyant, and always have jelly babies in his pocket. Something. So every doctor has a certain uniqueness over it. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's sort of like you said, that could be a line like, "Do you want a jelly baby?" Like when you think of Tom,
Yeah.
when you hear that, don't you? You sort of, when you see a big long scarf, you think of Tom. Whereas if you see a bow tie, you could think of Matt or Troughton. It's sort of little things like that.
Before and also before you mentioned First Doctor was looked like a protective one, and certainly with his granddaughter Susan.
Yeah, you sort of saw the granddad, didn't you? I think that was.
He was a little bit grumpy. Yeah, he was a little bit grumpy in the beginning, slow to trust newcomers. But in the comparison to the second Doctor, Patrick Troughton, he was more. The time was more warm and wise in certain ways.
Yeah, I think you saw, because of sort of the experiences of the first Doctor, it made, I would say, Troughton's Doctor a bit more open, a bit more willing to sort of want to make connections. Whereas I've always thought the first Doctor was very nervous about doing that. He was sort of, he got so used to just having him and Susan. Mm-hmm. It was like hard for him to sort of social. Well, he could socialize, but it was. I suppose it's sort of hard to think about when you've just been two people for so long. Mm-hmm. You sort of get so used to that, don't you? And he had to just sort of be broken out of his shell a bit. Mm-hmm. With Barbara and Ian.
Yes, that's another example. Last weekend I saw the classic story, The Three Doctors. There was an anniversary, 10 year,
oh, okay.
In 1973. You see the three doctors, William Hartnell and Patrick Troughton and John Pertwee. And then you have a scene when William Hartnell says, a dandy and a clown.
Yes.
And he referred the second Doctor he referred to as a clown, and the third Doctor as a dandy. That also says about the characters of the Doctors, how we see himself in the other incarnations. That's also interesting.
Yeah, that's another unique thing about the Doctor, isn't it? Like.
But what my point is also how does he know that the one is a clown and the other is because there are incarnations after him. He knows his next incarnations.
Yeah, but I think some of that is obviously the appearances, isn't he? He's sort of commenting like the dandy with like, and we've sort of some of that. Well, it's like dandy in English. Like if you say somebody's a dandy, you're sort of saying they look a bit posh. Mm-hmm. And if you think about Pertwee's Doctor with the sort of the flashy cape and the sort of velvet suits, you could tell he liked to look nice. Whereas Troughton is the exact opposite. He looks scruffy. He sort of has got like a mishmash outfit almost, and he sort of got the awkward haircut. So I do think the Doctor, but say what you were sort of, to add what you were saying, I think that's why Doctors don't get on almost when you put them in like a multi-Doctor story.
Yeah.
Because it's that sort of, they look at like, oh, that's me, like that used to be me, or that's future me, and they all sort of have a sort of negative, don't they, almost, a view of all their other incarnations and not themselves. That's why, like in the Five Doctors, when you've got that scene of them all trying to decipher the pillar, and they're just sort of they're bickering. There's no other word for it. They're just having a bit of a bicker, and it's like it takes I think it's the first Doctor to come and be like, right, can we stop having silly arguments and just find like the solution? And it's that sort of funness. That's what I sort of love about multi-Doctor stories. That sort of, because you think, oh yes, we're going to see how like this Doctor views the other Doctor, and like, are they going to get on? Are they not? It's sort of the fun of it.
Yes, and the arguing between the. Yes, that was a nice story. Three Doctors. I enjoy it. Really.
Well, yeah, and I think it's like, and we were sort of saying, Doctors are so different, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
That they sort of, that's the funness of, like, said, a Troughton who has that sort of scruffy outlook, and he's also quite different personality-wise to a Pertwee.
Well, I know. No, Martha Jones is more the nice companion for Daniel Leitch.
Oh, Daniel could have Martha. He'd be a very happy man. Let's put it that way.
We had it about Lila in the last weekend, and then there was a comment of Alpha who said
they knew what they were doing with Lila.
Yes, and Daniel Leitch said, "I want a costume of Lila for Martha Jones, the same costume."
Yeah, well, they knew what they were doing. Get a good-looking girl, put her in like the least amount of clothes they possibly could. Like, have her be a cave woman, so it actually makes sense for her to have a lot of flesh on show.
Yeah. In short, the other Doctors I want to mention, the third Doctor, I think, was, what do you call it, more dashing figure than his predecessors, I think.
Yeah, I think he was a bit more flash.
Yes.
That's how I see Pertwee.
Yes. More. You can see that with it. Sometimes he used martial arts, was his skill, but he do some fighting sport.
Yeah, and also like
martial arts. Yeah, Venusian Aikido. That was it. It was Venusian Aikido.
Yeah, and like if you want to think about habits, like his love for vehicles. Like, I know the Doctors have had sort of like little moments, but you associate sort of the love of cars and that sort of side with Pertwee's Doctor, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that was because Pertwee was like that. He sort of brought that into the character, didn't he? Because he loved his cars and his sort of gadgets.
Yeah, Bessie for like, and also I noticed on one thing that was he had more affection for his female companions. You cannot see it with Jo Grant, for example. More Gallant's action hero also.
Yeah, he sort of
very protective for his companions.
Yeah, that's what you sort of saw a bit of the first Doctor, but in a different fashion, didn't you? That protectiveness, but he was a bit more sort of. Whereas the first Doctor, he was protective of Susan, and there would be moments when he would sort of try and protect her and sort of take her away from danger. But with Pertwee's Doctor, I think you could see with Jo, he was a lot more affectionate overtly, even though he still wouldn't say he was like affectionate towards Jo, but you would see it with the little things he would do, like whether that's sort of compliment her a bit or say like when she's done a good job, or like if he ever had to send her like off somewhere, you could see he was very reluctant to do that with Jo. Whereas like with other Doctors, they're like, yeah, go on, Sarah Jane, or like other companions, they don't mind. They'd let them go and sort of explore almost by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with Pertwee, it was very like you could tell he really hated to do it almost with Jo.
Yeah. There was also a comment last weekend about the combination of Pertwee with Jo Grant and with Sarah Jane, and that Jo Grant was more. I think my opinion is that Jo Grant is in better combination than Sarah Jane. But with Fourth Doctor, it worked better with Sarah Jane.
Yeah, I think you sort of you could tell that. I think what I think that why that is because I think the third Doctor liked sort of being like that grandfather figure to Joe. He sort of liked having somebody who who wasn't his like scientific or intelligent equal that way, and he sort of liked coaching her almost and making her be a bit more better at that sort of side of things. Whereas Sarah was already quite intelligent when it came to, obviously she's a journalist, she's quite well read, she knows a lot of information already, and I think Pertwee sort of he liked, like I said, it sort of Sarah Jane, he didn't have to hold her hand as much. And I think he liked the fact that he had to hold almost Joe's hand a bit more.
Yes. Then short about this fourth Doctor. I think it was more eccentric than the others.
Yes.
And it was also, enjoyed much of the company of a wide range of individuals like Sarah Jane Smith. Weet je, looks like himself.
Yeah, I always see as, even though I sort of said Pertwee's Doctor was a bit flash, I don't think he enjoyed being centre of attention, whereas I think Tom's Doctor really enjoyed almost like being like front and centre and sort of being the sort of person that everybody looks to in a room. He sort of, whereas like to compare that to Troughton, he sort of excelled at being in the background, didn't he? He excelled at sort of being underestimated and sort of quiet in the background.
Yes,
Whereas,
I think he relied more on his charm and luck and experience. It was more laid back, I think. Is that the right word?
Yeah, no, I
relied more. I was more confident in a certain way than the other Doctors.
That's probably the better way to say it. I'd say Tom was definitely one of the more confident, sort of outgoing Doctors, wasn't he?
Well, I like this topic.
No, it's fun.
You can do much with this topic. I was searching for a long time. I think you can do more of this topic because we go now quick. But you do one Doctor in one night. Because there's much to talk about one certain Doctor.
Yeah, and because as well, like that's what I think has always been clever about the writers for the show. Yeah. Like you could tell they really wanted all the stories to not just have the same sort of personality explored or the same traits sort of shown. They wanted to put the Doctors in these situations where you would see something different, or they'd have to like think on their feet a lot to try and like show how inventive they could be or how clever they could be. Because that's what I love about that's some of my favorite Doctor stories, when like they've got no like help, they're completely out on a limb almost, and you just think, how are they going to get out of this one? Like that's the fun of the show for me, when they do stories like that.
And by the way, he was the only Doctor. Yes, he was the only Doctor with another Time Lord as companion. By the way, for Doctor Romana. You can. There's another dynamic in that relationship, because she's also a Time Lord, and there's another chemistry than with a human. You can see that. I can feel that. I cannot exactly explain what it is, but my feeling is there's another chemistry.
Yeah, and I think it's because the Doctor, whenever he's around a human, he'll always have to keep some things secret, won't he? He'll always have to sort of hold back a bit, because like a human experience versus a Time Lord's experience are completely different.
Yes.
Whereas with another Time Lord, he can sort of relax. He can sort of be a bit more free. I've always thought.
I think I agree with the disaster area says Tom was the most alien of as a Doctor. I think I feel it also. I think you're right.
Yeah, he
because
was sort of
yeah,
that sort of, like we sort of said, that more outgoing personality. It sort of
yeah.
he really sort of used that, and it's sort of like I said, it's like he was almost like cocky, but in a good way, Tom.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
That's a nice bridge to the Fifth Doctor, but I think the Fifth Doctor, Peter Davison, is most human Doctor of all, and very human and vulnerable.
Yeah, I think they almost, because Tom felt like he was unstoppable, didn't he?
Yeah,
Sometimes, and like nothing could touch him almost. They
yeah,
wanted to have a Doctor that was vulnerable to sort of counteract Tom.
yeah.
I've always felt with Peter.
He had, I think, ook the most energetic Doctor. Displayed energy and more energy. But I think one of the factors is age, the age of the actor, and also I don't know, but
Well, yeah, in
it
classic,
can
he was
count.
very
Yeah,
much the youngest they'd ever like.
yeah.
It
Because
wasn't until Matt that we sort of got that sort of similar age, sort of in comparison to all the others before.
yeah,
And
another energy, another
yeah,
energy. Yeah,
and you sort of in like that because when you think of Davidson, you think of mustache, and like he is just running about, isn't he, in that cricket outfit? That's what you sort of think of.
hmm and you can see in some stories. Most of the time, he used some improvisation for the best way out of a tricky situation.
Yeah,
When some things.
because they actually destroyed his Sonic, didn't they? Right at the
Yeah,
beginning of his run. So that was really a brilliant idea they had.
yeah,
They'd realised back then that it become too much of a reliance for the Doctor. Like the Doctor got too comfortable almost having the Sonic. So taking that away, it made Davidson's Doctor, yes, more vulnerable, but it made that he had to think. He had to really use what was around him.
yeah. And also we know that he was also the first Doctor who sacrificed himself. So
Yeah,
he had very yeah. He was one of the Doctors who most want to do a step further in the other Doctors in that
yeah.
way.
He was almost like a precursor to what happened with the modern Doctors, wasn't he?
Yeah. hmm
It
He
was
was
sort of
I think it is counted as classic Who, but he can also be in new Who. It was a foreshadowing of the
yeah,
new
and
Who.
it was almost like
Yeah.
they, because if you think about how most of the new Who Doctors have gone out, it has been
Mhm.
in either to save somebody directly, or it has been to sort of sacrifice themselves for like a whole planet or like group of people. And obviously, what the Fifth Doctor did for Perry, it was incredibly. And I think I'm really happy that that was his end, because
Mhm.
I know a lot of people didn't love his stories beforehand. So I really have always appreciated that he went out probably in one of the most, it's like, self-sacrificing ways that a Doctor could go. I think
Mhm.
the Fifth Doctor has sort of got one of the most selfish, compassionate, sort of perfect ends almost in comparison to some of the others.
Yeah. And then we have the sixth Doctor, Tom Baker. Uh,
Oh,
Colin
Colin
Baker
Baker.
was I'm looking for the word eloquent, most eloquent Doctor.
Yeah, I would say he almost was like an aristocrat, wasn't he? He
Yeah.
was sort of spoke like he was a bit higher than everybody else and a bit more important.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, not arrogant, but more. He was more. We call it in Nederland and in Dutch we call it grandiose, grandiose.
Yeah, grandiose.
Yeah,
That's
grandiose.
sort of,
That's the word I'm looking for. It was grandiose and eloquent. a certain way. Now, not so Tom Baker was a little bit eccentric, but this doctor is more not yeah, a little eccentric, but in another way, more eloquent, I think. Yes.
Yeah, he sort of. I never thought of that, but yeah, he sort of, because the Time Lords were like they were basically modelled, weren't they, off the old sort of class system that we did have in Britain, like hundreds of years ago, where you did have your lords and you did have your sort of higher class of people, and then below them you had like the common folk, and sort of you can see Colin very much coming almost from that idea of the Time Lords basically being modelled off that. Well, in Classic Who they definitely were, weren't they?
Mm-hmm. Also a manic personality.
Oh, just a bit.
But very extreme in certain things.
Yeah, he's sort of the way he treats Perry. I think I've said this before when we were watching. It's like, Perry, why do you stay with this bloke? Like, he just abuses you, like verbally, like nearly every episode. He calls you like stupid, or like makes up that like Perry actually says something clever and he takes credit for it. He's not nice, really, to Perry at all, I would argue.
Yeah. And he was all that is also the reason I think he was more capable of violent action in his stories, because he was so manic and he was so driven.
There's also the little fan theory, isn't there, that because of the way Davidson regenerated, he regenerated from like a really bad poison. Like, he didn't know if he was going to even regenerate. Mm-hmm. So some people say that's why Colin's sort of incarnation's a bit manic, because of like a side effect almost.
Okay, we go to the Seventh Doctor. I thought the Seventh Doctor was more like a scientist in certain ways. How he fixed things, how he solved things. More strategist, more long-term thinker, but more thinking about the consequences of certain actions.
Well, yeah, because Ace called him Professor, so you had that sort of interesting teacher and student dynamic, which, like, it'd been done before in Classic, but I feel like Sylvester's run sort of was the main one that you saw that relationship. And then that's why I do like Sylvester. Like, once they get past the sort of comedy stuff with his Doctor, and you do see that edge, that sort of, like you said, the strategist, the sort of one who's sort of in the shadows planning his moves, and sort of you don't realise that until like you literally are caught in his trap almost. And I think considering like what we said the Doctor's known as, Sylvester's Doctor's a very interesting version, because he almost goes against some of those traits, but not fully. That you can still recognise that's the Doctor, but you can see it's almost. I almost see Sylvester's Doctor sort of like being just like a couple of steps behind almost the Valeyard. Like, he's still good and he still will defend people and he still is compassionate, but he's a little bit more scheming, he's a little bit more sort of tricky.
By the way, that's also one thing of Sylvester McCoy. I think I see in most development Doctor incarnation by McCoy, because you can see a difference in the later stories from comedic to dark. I noticed it also. So this Doctor develops very quick.
Yeah, and I think it shows how sort of switched on like the production team and Sylvester was, that they very quickly didn't sort of seem to identify. Right, the comedy's not working. We have to do something different.
Yeah, so they want. I read about it that they want to do another direction. That's why Sylvester changed his personality in a way.
Yeah, and I think that just shows such a skill from everybody involved, that they sort of swallowed their pride and were like, right, our first take isn't working, we need to go for another take.
Now we go to the Eighth Doctor. There's not so much to tell, but what I saw from the movie wasn't. First of all, he was the most romantic, I think, because of the scenes and the more sensitive side of the Doctor, more sensitive than the other previous Doctors.
Yeah, he's almost like I almost see the sort of the Eighth Doctor in the movie anyway as sort of like a Victorian poet. The sort of, when you think of like Byron and sort of that era of poetry, that's where I would place the Eighth Doctor. Sort of whimsical and romantic, and sort of very flowery at times, the way he would speak, and would sort of like sweep you off your feet. That's how I think of the Eighth Doctor. But obviously, once you go to his audio stuff, that's when once again, it's almost like a Sylvester situation again. You see a very different Eighth Doctor when you listen to his audios.
Yeah, the big finish of the Eighth Doctor are really good.
Yeah, and it's
one of the best, I think. Paul McGann in the big finish, one of the best.
Well, yeah, because he's sort of, the other Doctors had established themselves, hadn't they, on their runs, and like with the Eighth Doctor, he had one movie, and then he was finished. So I think on audio, they've really allowed Paul to just go for fun and to just really explore his Doctor. Yes, like you do with Martha and your whole list, Daniel. No, but it's sort of, whereas, like, if you compare the movie Eighth Doctor to the Eighth Doctor we see in that minisode for the 50th, they did the Night of the Doctor.
Yep.
It's sort of, once again, it's like night and day when you compare these sort of different versions almost of the same character.
The sister area says McGann was the bridge from classic to new Who with his relation with his companion. Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Well, the whole kissing thing started with him, didn't it?
More romantic, but yeah, that was the case at most of Tennant and Rose. But by other, I don't know really.
Well, they sort of Amy fancied the 11th Doctor for a bit, and then thankfully Moffat sort of stopped that. Capaldi, some people see that as romantic with Clara. I don't.
No, I don't see that.
But I don't know what I would class it, because it's not. You can tell there's real deep affection for Clara. I don't know what I'd class it as, actually. Now I'm thinking. Maybe when I get to watching it again, I'll be able to understand it a bit better.
Okay. Do we do the War Doctor or not? I don't know really. War Doctor.
Well, I think
Ninth Doctor. Can we do the Ninth Doctor a little bit? But War Doctor.
Well, I think we sort of spoke a bit, but I think the War Doctor's sort of the Doctor darker. At the end of his tether, like, really, isn't it?
The most dark side of the Doctor.
Yeah, it's sort of, he's been in the war for God knows how long.
Yeah.
And he's gonna have to pick an impossible choice. So I would say actually tortured. That's how I would describe the War Doctor.
Yeah, it was an incarnation specifically chosen to be that of a warrior who would fight in less break time war. Yes, because that's and Matt Smith. I thought it was Matt Smith was stated that this action broke the promise of the name of the Doctor. That we can see in the special of the name of the Doctor.
Yeah, and that's why they don't talk about him. That's what he also says.
That's the one thing I know about the War Doctor in some ways. But I had also some compassion over him. I noticed in that John Hurt some compassion.
Oh yeah, well you can sort of say
Still some character traits of the Doctor in a compassion way.
well you can you could argue willing it was nothing but compassion
Yeah.
that made him have to choose the moment. Like
Yes.
it was out of utter love of his people that he was seeing what they were becoming as well. He was seeing how they were getting almost, or if not worse than the Daleks.
What I mean is, it was necessary that he became the War Doctor because of the situation.
Yeah.
In a certain way, he didn't choose it for himself. It was necessary to change in that way to solve the problem of Gallifrey.
He was. You can maybe argue he was almost like a tool. He was sort of created for a reason for the war.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. Yeah.
So 9, like there's some overlap because obviously 9 comes from war, and when you first seen the Ninth Doctor, I've always said he's almost like a walking wounded soldier. That's the sort of impression you get of 9 at the beginning.
More emotions, was more emotional, and you see more the scars of the war. You see psychologically.
Yeah.
more. You see more psychological side of the Doctor. More the wounds. You say that. You say that good.
Yeah.
But that's what you mean.
Yeah, like it's like he's not recovered from the Time War yet, and he's been alone for you don't know how long exactly he's been alone. And I think it's the combination of all those things that he's sort of I almost see the Ninth Doctor as he's just on the edge, like not on the edge, like he's just coping, and beneath all that, there's so many emotions fighting, and he's just like coping. He's just about keeping it all together. But if he sees something, or if somebody says something to him, it can just flip, and all at once, all those emotions he's been hiding come to the floor, and you sort of see them on display, don't you? But they're sort of hidden a lot of the time.
Is triggered in some cases. Triggered, but it can also switch really fast to make dry jokes. Dry jokes. You got that? Droog humor, dry humor.
Yeah, and like
to soften things for himself.
Yes, I was going to say, I think as humans, when sometimes we are in a bad situation or we aren't feeling good, we do use humor, don't we, to sort of disguise it. And I think the Ninth Doctor, that's exactly what he's doing.
He used it most of very often in comparison to other doctors.
Yes, he sort of, and sometimes it can come across a bit awkward, but I've always seen that as it's awkward because he's doing it he's falsely trying to be chipper and happy, and that's why it doesn't come across right, because it's not a genuine feeling he's feeling. He's just almost putting on a show. I think a lot of the time, the Ninth Doctor. And it takes Rose to basically fix that.
Yes, that's right. And then he's also the Doctor who sacrificed himself, also like Peter Davison, to save Rose's life.
Yeah, and I love that moment in Parting of the Way, the way when he can't press the button, and he says "coward," and he calls himself a coward, and I think that's such a brilliant line.
Absolutely.
Because he's gone from being so fiery and warrior-like, what we know now, to literally not being able to press a button because he knows it's going to wipe out the Earth. And he's basically back there. He's back at Gallifrey again. He's back with the moment almost. It's history repeating itself. Which is caused all the context we got later on, but that's what I love now watching that scene. We know so much more almost.
And we see also the traumas back in the 10th Doctor by Tennant.
Yes.
I also noticed some for the manic personality of what Joker was it?
Tom, because David did grow up watching Tom Baker, so he probably did take little bits of Tom's Doctor.
Yes, that's right. He had a more a bright, playful side, I think, and he was a doctor who could not express his exact feelings.
Yeah, I think,
or he was unable or unwilling to express his exact feelings.
I think
in
almost
comparison to other doctors who there was more a doctor with a hidden agenda, I think.
Yeah, I almost see Ten like a doctor of extremes.
Mm-hmm.
Like he'd be really cheery, really smiley, like loving the adventure, loving being in this sort of, let's be fair, like good-looking, handsome body. Like he enjoyed that. He would be he would flirt sometimes. Like that was a new thing for a doc. I know because I never saw, even though we said McGann's Doctor was romantic, I never saw him as openly knowing he was flirting. And I always associate that with Ten, like knowing, like he would like give looks, and he would like, if he got kissed, he would sort of like sort his hair out afterwards and sort of have little one-liners that he knows. So that was sort of another bit of the personality, this sort of flirtiness that we hadn't seen before.
Yeah, but also at the same time a little bit platonic. You call that platonic?
Oh yeah, he had that with Donna. Like there was no romance whatsoever, but you could tell he absolutely adored her.
And also, I noticed he showed some more fear, and you can see that with he didn't want to regenerate.
Yes.
It was fear. Some of was more. You can see he had more fear than the other doctors. More fear.
Yeah, and I think that was an interesting thing Russell did, to see a doctor almost regret regeneration and sort of, like I said, it wasn't just I don't want to go line. He had that brilliant conversation with Wilf, and he sort of said the other famous line of it's like another man comes and takes over, or like he basically compares it to death. And I know some people don't like that, but if you actually think about what regeneration is, that body is dying. It is being rewritten. And that's what almost the Doctor was scared of, I think, in that story. So it was a really interesting thing for them to do, I think, with the Doctor.
He was afraid of losing his identity in this sort of way.
Yeah, and I think like I said, and I think it's a bit of the unknown. Like that's another human thing.
Yeah.
It's like we all sort of, when we don't know what we're doing, we're a bit more nervous. And I think the Doctor was nervous almost a bit of what was going to be his next body. What was he going to be like or look like?
And in the last scene, we see that also he was completely heartbroken.
Oh yeah.
The other doctors, he was completely heartbroken. You can sense that. I don't want to go.
Yeah, but then because of all the sort of nervousness and not wanting to, that then made it so much more impactful when he did sacrifice himself for Will.
He was a doctor who accepting his destiny more less or yes. Less.
Yeah, I would say that was, but that
accepting. He couldn't. There was a doctor who couldn't accept things much good than others.
Yes, he sort of he thought he could change things more, didn't he?
Yeah.
He sort of thought
Yeah.
he could fight time almost and rewrite it.
Mhm.
When plenty of doctors had told us before 10, you can't do that. History's got fixed points. There's things that have to happen.
Yes, and then when we go to your favorite doctor, Matt Smith.
Yes.
More, yeah. Can you tell about what do you think? What's his uniqueness in Doctor Who?
I think for me, and this is why I love Matt so much, it's the mixture. I know people say Davidson had it a bit, but I think Matt fully embraced this sort of thing of he looks about 12. He looks so young, but he's got eyes of like 100-plus-year-old man. It's amazing just to see this sort of really young, sort of also add to that the sort of comedy Matt would do quite a lot, the sort of silliness he would do. But when he had to be serious or when his doctor was really hurting, you just had to look at his eyes. And all at once, you sort of, it's like he aged on screen without any effects.
Yeah.
And I think the story I usually tell for that is I loved him after his first episode, but it was in the Big Bang when he's all wired up and he's about to go and he thinks he's going to die. And I remember watching that for the first time and I was just blown away because Matt's face when he's saying goodbye to Amy, he literally, I'd seen the age of the Doctor before Matt. I saw it in bits of Tennant, I saw it in bits of Eccleston, but it was Matt that fully convinced me. This is 1,000-year-old being who's sort of just pretending to be a lot younger than he actually is.
Yes, he had some renewed youthful enthusiasm after Eccleston and Tennant.
Yeah, I sort of call him the Peter Pan Doctor sometimes because of that. So the boy who never grew up.
Yeah, but I've noticed some comparison with some similarities with the Seventh Doctor, Sylvester McCoy, in a certain way. More cunningness. The
Yeah,
word? Same cunningness as Seventh Doctor.
Yeah, when Matt went dark, he was scary as well.
Yes.
That's also what I loved about him. Like you sort of with Eccleston, it was like pure anger. You felt like with Tennant, it was sort of. I'm trying to. How would you describe like when he was sort of angry or? I'm trying to think how I'd describe Tennant now. Like I said, maybe just. I can't think, but like with Matt, it always came across to me as more vicious. Like it's sort of like this sort of. He's not just gonna make you regret it. He's gonna really like wreck your life almost if you get on the wrong side of Matt's Doctor. So it was sort of that sort of. Because I love the contrast in Matt's Doctor that he could be this child, he could be goofy, he could fingers and custard, and then in the next breath he was giving you a look to be like, oh, I'm gonna run away now, like I'm gonna hide in a corner. Like that's what Matt's Doctor could do.
And I see some similarities with Second Doctor, Patrick Troughton in a certain way.
Yes, because Matt watched, didn't he? Matt watched Pat, and he sort of said in interviews afterwards he took a lot of inspiration.
Oh, I didn't know that. I was good in my observation in that.
Oh yeah, no, he watched I think Tomb. I think he said in an interview, Tomb of the Cybermen, and he really loved Pat's performance in that, and he took quite a bit of inspiration.
Yeah, I can see that in his performance of Matt Smith. I can see some things of Second Doctor in him, and that I like that. That is one of the things I like about Matt Smith's Doctor is that there are some things I see in Patrick Troughton also.
Yeah, I think I've always seen him taking from Pat the sort of looking more silly than you actually are. They both sometimes would look more stupid, so they could disarm people. I think Matt took that aspect from the Second Doctor. So then people didn't like, because he would do that, like he'd sort of look a bit silly, and then in the next breath he would just have like a really powerful like put down speech, and you just be like, okay, like you could tell people were just confused, and I think he took that from the Second Doctor. But that's what also I really like about Matt, that it's not a copy, is it? He's not exactly copying Troughton.
Exactly.
You can tell he's seen it and he's doing his own version of it.
Yes, that's right.
Like you were saying you saw bits of Tom in David. Like that's sort of the fun thing of the new Who Doctors.
Yeah, but that is what I mean. I said that we had that conversation a few weeks ago about that. What was it? You want to identify. You want to see the origins of the Doctor, the concept of the whole show, and from the beginning to now. How to call. Yeah, there are some things the Doctor, what is typical for the Doctor, and you want to see that in every Doctor. Every Doctor has uniqueness, but you want some things that are that are fixed.
Yeah, you sort of there's been established parts of the legacy almost of the personality.
That's what I mean. Yes, that we discussed a few weeks ago.
But like I said, but we didn't really say like that's what makes sort of the newer Doctors unique almost, because obviously in classic, and I know maybe some of them did take from other Doctors, but I've always got the impression they were very much that was that actor's take on the role, instead of sort of looking back and like taking bits from the past but still doing their own. And I feel like a lot of Tennant, Smith and Capaldi, you can really see them sort of almost picking little bits from classic Doctors, but then doing their own spin and really like making it their own. And I think that's what makes sort of it really interesting to watch New Who.
Yeah, that's what I want to say. They did their homework. They had also a passion and love for Doctor Who themselves.
Oh,
and that's what and they make their own Doctor in their own way, but with the influence of the other Doctors. And you see now in the current Doctor that she hasn't done her homework, and she hasn't done no affiliation or.
I think the problem
she don't know. You think she don't know the show.
Yeah, no, I think the problem is we've got very surface level traits, haven't we?
Mm-hmm.
Like people say, you can tell she's seen a bit of Tennant because she's friends with him, and it's sort of some of the. I think that's why she pulls some of those faces. She's trying to be a bit like Ten, like because he would sometimes pull funny faces, but it worked with Tennant because it wasn't constant, and it was sort of he would be saying something quite funny while he was doing it. So you didn't like go, God, that looks bad. Whereas when she does it, she hasn't got the comedy, and it just looks like she's pulling a face. And then I think from 11, she has tried to take some of the awkwardness of Matt's Doctor, but hasn't understood it. And that's the difference. Like any actor can watch this show and can go, right, the Doctor does this, the Doctor does that. But they don't have that more deeper understanding, it's not going to come across right. Whereas even Eccleston, who wasn't a fan, and I don't know if he watched the show before he played it, I don't know honestly, but even with Eccleston, you could still go, no, I can still see the Doctor there, even though he's very damaged this version and he's sort of suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with her, for me anyway, I just don't see the Doctor in any way. I just see somebody pretending to be the Doctor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But by the way, by Matt Smith, I noticed also that he you got it frantic. So some things, some moments he's quickly turns frantic. frantically angry. Yes, that's the word. Frantically angry and
Well, he
ruthless.
sort of,
When events abandoned it for me.
yeah, I sort of laugh though with Matt's doctor. Like he's
Yeah.
all in this country we'd say he's all arms and legs.
Yeah,
Like he's sort of,
extreme in his feelings. In one way, he makes jokes, and then the second and then the second after that, he can suddenly switch into an angry person, ruthless.
yes. It's sort of, and sometimes you don't even know what's going to flip him to do that. That's what's also it's interesting with Matt's doctor. Sometimes you can like tell, oh God, that's going to set him off, but other times it seems to just come out of the blue. Yeah, I agree. Chibnall wanted to change a lot of things, which is why it's not worked.
That's why there's some fans who cannot. They feel it don't. We call it. It don't feel like Doctor Who anymore in certain way, because
Yes,
there's so much messed up. It's one mess. We discuss now all doctors in short way, but you can see that by the last doctor, the 13th doctor, there are some things wrong for our feeling.
I think what it is as well, like obviously
it's not because she's a woman, but it's more the character traits.
Even though, and I've made the people who know me like I've not hidden the fact I do think the Doctor is a male role, but I do think if they got push comes to shove a better actress, and I could at least see the traits, I could at least watch it easier. And it's sort of like I said, it's and I think as well, it's like we've both spoke about this. Like we all have a link to this show. Like we all feel like we know the Doctor almost. Like they're almost like a friend at this point. So when we see like something we don't identify as that, it sort of takes us out of it, and it finds it's difficult for us.
Now we jump to the 12th Doctor. 12th Doctor is an interesting one in certain way for me. I think that is a Doctor. You can see that he is looking for himself. He's in a journey to know who am I more.
Yeah,
he's searching for who am I more.
Yeah, like if
I must learn things for himself.
Yeah, like if we were to think of like words that we have been, I would say reflective for the 12th Doctor. Like he's a lot of inner sort of reflection and trying to, like you said, find out, am I who I thought I was before? Am I this sort of? I've always seen the 12th Doctor as he's sort of one half of him's like I'm known as this hero, this sort of force for good in the universe. I've like saved lives and planets, but then that doubt then really comes to the floor. Like it really maybe, and I don't know what you think. I've always like watching Capaldi again. I do think that doubt was always in the other Doctors. We just see it more in Capaldi's Doctor.
Yeah, but one comparison, one similarity with Matt Smith's Doctor, for example, I think is lack of tact and odd behavior.
Yes.
That's a comparison with Matt Smith is same thing. At some points he's not much tact.
Yeah, he sort of he doesn't understand what he's saying can come across as cruel.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah, he doesn't think maybe it's sort of other Doctors would know I have to sort of say some nice things, or I have to hug, or I have to do something to sort of lighten the mood. Whereas the 12th Doctor would just go straight in with like, oh, your family's dead. Like he wouldn't try and like, whereas other Doctors would be like try and like say, oh, they're in a better place, and like they didn't go like it was a quick death. Like I always feel like that Doctor would just go into a room and say, oh, your dad's died. You know, sort of just be that point blank about it, whereas other doctors wouldn't be.
Capaldi, a bit like McCoy, changed a bit in each season, but it's mostly like a classic Doctor. Yeah, I think it would fit in a classic era, Capaldi, in a certain way.
Yeah, because also, like I said, he was sort of, when we think of older Doctors, we think of the whole no hanky panky rule, and I think of that when I think of 12. He would sort of be like, nope, you're just my companion, you're just nothing more. That's actually, I like that moment. I think it is in series 8. He even says that to Clara, doesn't he? Like, I'm not your boyfriend. I'm not this. I'm the Doctor. Like, he's very point blank once again, like I said, with that sort of thing.
And it was also most expressed, the most doubt of all the Doctors, because you can see it was doubting about the fact, or am I a good man? Am I? But I'm yeah. Am I a good man? He asked himself.
Yeah, and he sort of, and like I said, I do think a lot of things with Capaldi's Doctor was sort of feelings and emotions that have been brewing for a long time.
Yeah.
Because that's why, for years, I didn't understand why he had such a bad reaction to Clara dying. I always sort of didn't understand that until a while ago when I was watching Heaven Sent again. And like my sort of theory now is it wasn't so much Clara dying that made him flip out and go that crazy. It was more Clara was the last straw when it came to companions dying.
Mm-hmm.
It was just he'd had so many losses up to that point that it just took one more companion dying for him to go, no, I'm not going to do this again. And that's why we got the sort of renegade almost sort of bit we saw of Capaldi's Doctor when Clara died.
Yeah, and he went also. He went very far to get her back.
Yes, he really like
You can see with Hellbent, you can see that. For example, in Hellbent.
Yeah, and it's almost a bit of now. I've said that it's almost a bit of 7, isn't it? Showing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's something I could picture the 7th Doctor if he like had a companion he really cared about doing.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of going, I don't care about the rules. I don't care about whether I should or shouldn't do this. I just want my companion back.
Yeah, and in the end, he had to erase his memories of Clara in that way.
Well, yeah, and it was sort of the ultimate punishment, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was sort of, and that's the other thing. Like the Doctor, that's what I also love about this show. Like whenever the Doctor goes too far, usually there's always a consequence.
Mm-hmm.
There's always something he has to sort of suffer because he's gone too far. Like with 10, when he did the Time Lord Victorious thing, it was the Doctor killing herself to sort of prove a point to him almost. That I'm supposed to die, that's a fixed point.
Yeah.
And you can't just you can't just change that on a whim. And then obviously once that happened, that was the start of his downfall, wasn't it? Almost the 10th Doctor.
Yeah.
Same with Capaldi, it's like they can only go and that's why I think it's important for whoever's writing the Doctor to realise like they're important and they're the main character of the show, but they can't break their own rules too much. Because then that's when people suffer around them or they suffer. And that's another thing with Jodie's Doctor. She constantly gets people killed or horrible things happen, but there's no consequences for her.
Nice bridge. The 13th Doctor. Okay.
I think what they were trying to do, like if I'm trying to be like positive, I think what they were trying to do with 13 was they thought like because of the Time War and because of how like the amount of damage the Doctor had, they almost wanted to sort of go, let's have a really fresh, optimistic, no baggage incarnation almost.
Yeah.
I think that's what they were trying to do, but failed miserably.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think they were trying to do with the 13th Doctor personality-wise?
They wanted to put more another sort of dynamic in it. I think. There is some. I can notice some curiosity to explore things in her more than other, but it doesn't work. Not. I think you want to make her a caring doctor, but it is not whole. The whole project is a little bit not the whole thing that it was supposed to be. I think. I know.
Well, I think I can see. I think they were trying to make her caring.
Caring in a certain way, but it is not. You cannot see it on screen.
Yeah,
Feel
no,
it. Feel it more. You cannot feel it.
Well, no, I think it's more than that. I think, like we said before, like the Doctor shows caring by not like picking favourites and treating everybody the same. And like with her, it really feels like she has certain people she cares about and she'll do everything she can for. And there's other people she just decides she doesn't like them and will just leave them to die. Like that's honestly how I see that Jodie's Doctor sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, you're my friend, I'll save you, but no, I don't need to try and save. Like a lot of the side characters just sort of get left to die in her era.
Mm.
And I always think the Doctor, because of the Time War, because of the history of this character, death's a sensitive topic to the Doctor. And I think they wouldn't be that blasé. They wouldn't be that flippant. They would either try and save everybody at like the cost of themselves, or they'd really regret not doing it. And you'd see that in the Doctor, like they'd be really upset.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with her, it's like, nope, I'm just going to go to my next adventure without any sort of even just a time. Like I said, I think that's probably what would make me like her more, if I could see a bit of regret for what her actions have like sort of made happen.
Yeah, I sense some more frustration in comparison to other doctors by the 13th Doctor. More frustration in certain way.
That's interesting. Like what? In what way?
In the interactions with her team, I noticed.
Oh yeah.
I feel that. I can feel that, but it's more a feeling. I must look for examples, but she comments to certain things what her team is saying, and you can feel some frustration in some things when they ask well, for example, I know it. For example, what who are you, doctor? And then she reacts in a frustrated way.
When she does the "you don't know me" speech.
Yeah. There's more frustration in this doctor than other doctors.
Yeah, and no, that's a good point actually. Because as well, I think that moment would have worked better in her first series.
Mm-hmm.
But it was weird that in her second series, suddenly they're having the companions questioning her, and it's like, well, you should have done that a series ago.
That is more of one of the strongest scenes of her, I think.
Yeah, well, that's
in a certain way.
But that's what the Doctor or the actors in the past have worked best when you have given them conflict. Whether that's with companions or an enemy or a situation. And it's like they hardly give her any conflict. And it would really, like, and you sort of said, like, but it doesn't help that her companions, like, that it's probably a frustration, that's coming through from the writers. I wouldn't be surprised, because they're such flat characters, her companions.
Yeah.
If you compare them to like every other companion, they sort of fall very much to the wayside, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at, Sudoku. You really felt like with the Doctor, they always try and save everybody.
Yeah.
And with her, it's just like, it's fine. I'll just let like half a planet die, or like let half the people I've like talked to and tried to say previously in the episode just die.
I'm looking for a word. Indifferent. Indifferent. Maar onverschillig noem je dat in Dutch. Indifferent.
Yeah,
look like it doesn't matter, whatever. Yeah. Is it a good explanation?
Yeah, no, it's a very good one. She's very indifferent at times to like everything around her.
Yes.
And it's like,
but more out of self-protection, I think, was because she's socially awkward.
yeah, no, but that's like that whole scene. She was putting her own feelings.
Yeah, but she describes in that scene their own personality in some way.
Yeah, but it's like you can tell she's saying like, I don't like being in this position, so I'm going to take myself out of it. Yeah. And you've got poor Graham there who stood in that scene going like, I've just said I'm worried about my cancer, and you just said this to me. It's like, what? Like, it's... And I think also, I think that scene maybe would have been a bit better if it maybe would have lingered. Like, the camera would have stayed on Graham after she had that line to sort of show his sort of confusion or hurt at her acting like that. But it was like, oh no, we're finished now, scene's over. And it was just like, what on earth have I just watched?
So, we had all doctors.
Yeah, did quite well.
In short term, because I had more to talk about every doctor, but that was in short, every doctor explained.
Yeah, short little bursts. Short little bursts of each doctor.
Yeah. All is interesting. Is even the 13th Doctor, Jodie Whittaker, is in some way interesting. In the case of, yeah, we call. How can I explain that?
It's interesting to sort of talk about where they've gone wrong with her Doctor.
Yes, that's right. In comparison to others, and some things, is it good to analyze that?
Yeah, no, I think it is because
without that to have an opinion about it, you can analyze her Doctor in some way. Yeah,
and you can sort of, and like we didn't even bring in the gender stuff. It was just the personality we talked about.
Personality. This is much interesting. I look forward to these doctors in the coming weeks.
Yeah, and like you said, also you're going to have to talk about the companions and like how they affected their doctors.
Yes, and the habits and the skills they had. So there's much to talk about.
Yeah, and even like how each one regenerated. Like they've all got very different ways why they've regenerated or how it came about. Like that's also very fun to talk about.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we have much to talk about then in the coming weeks.
Yeah, and obviously with the chat, like thank you for what you've been saying in the chat. That's been fun to also interact with.
Yeah,
got some very informed people in the chat, which is nice.
Yes, that's really cool. He says that Ari knows a lot about it. It's Sadeko also.
Yep, and PD and Daniel and Cam and have I missed anybody like disaster area and anybody else I've missed?
Kamikaze.
Sorry, you say that one because I'll.
Give me cheese. No. Okay. What is? There are more. What you say? 6 and 13 are similar.
Oh, no, because 6 is compassionate. That's one of his big traits.
6 is Colin Baker.
So Yes, sorry, I've got my numbers mixed up. Sorry, 6 is Colin Baker.
In some way, I think there is some similarity.
Yeah, I think it's sort of, you get the sense with both of them that whoever, like the production and the showrunner sort of didn't quite know what they wanted to do with each of those doctors.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like you said, like with Colin, his first impression is he strangles Perry. It's like that's a very harsh first impression to sort of give for a doctor. And
yeah.
And then he sort of is very dismissive of her. But then I'm not going to deny there's little moments you see of Colin's compassion, but it's very small. So you're sort of a bit confused about why they went that way with his doctor.
Can you say more similarity with egocentric?
Oh yeah, I would say the egos are very similar.
Yeah, and a word I looking for the word pompous.
See, I don't think Joe.
Do you know the word pompous?
Yeah, I would apply that to Colin. I wouldn't apply that to Jodie's doctor.
Okay. Yeah.
I would say with Colin it is pomp, whereas he, like with Collins, you get a sense that he sort of secretly knows he's looking a bit like an idiot. Like he sort of knows a little bit that he's coming across like that, whereas Jodie comes across to me like she doesn't understand how like full of herself she is sometimes. If that makes sense.
Okay, but that is for a later time. I think we have to have now 2 hours done. 2 hours. Good. I think we will finish the stream now. Thank you all for your for your what do you call the contribution to the stream. And
Thank you all for joining.
Yes. So I want to thank you all. Thank you, Charlotte, for coming.
I always have a fun time, Joker. So just
Okay.
message me if you ever want me to be.
Okay, that's good. Okay. Bye for you all, and have a nice week. Bye
Have
bye.
a good week.
Bye bye.